Always happy to help, Mr. Speaker. Well, I'm very pleased to join the discussion today on Bill 57, the Pooled Registered Pension Plan Act. Last year, we informed Ontarians that this government is very much committed to addressing the retirement income crunch that many people are going to be facing in the future. And that's why we are introducing this very innovative new strategy. It's going to help people to save for the future, to save for their senior years. The PRPPs are a new type of voluntary, tax-assisted, individual retirement savings vehicle. And the reason why you see our government bringing this forward is to make it easier to save for retirement for employees and also for self-employed people, Mr. Speaker. For that segment of the workforce, we often hear that they are unprepared for retirement. This is an additional savings vehicle that is going to be low cost. It's based on a very simple design model, and it will be professionally managed. It's going to be portable, so if a worker moves from one job to another, they can take the plan with them. It transfers. It's going to follow them to the next workforce. Now, the other advantage here, Mr. Speaker, is that PRPPs will have a more favorable tax status than group registered retirement savings plans, or RRSPs. PRPPs are designed to be of particular benefit for small and medium-sized businesses that oftentimes don't have the capacity and the wherewithal to offer a plan to their workers, the kind of traditional type of pension plan you see in larger workplaces. Mr. Speaker, PRPPs would be administered by licensed third-party administrators such as financial institutions which are regulated. These, of course, have their investments pooled to reduce costs, and that improves returns. Now, if you will remember, the 2014 budget and the fall economic statement stated that the government intended to move forward with a PRPP plan. The framework at the time, we noted, would be consistent with the model introduced by the federal government. And we already see this being adopted in a number of provinces. You've already heard this mentioned by my colleague in Newmarket, Aurora. So on December 8th, Ontario introduced legislation to implement PRPPs in this province. Now, if this bill is passed by the Legislature, it would come into play once supporting regulations have been developed. And it should be noted that as a voluntary retirement savings vehicle, the preferred approach is that PRPPs would not be considered a comparable workplace pension plan. And that's in the context of the new Ontario Retirement Pension Plan, or the ORPP. People enrolled in a PRPP would not be exempt from taking part in the ORPP. In December of this past year, Ontario released a consultation paper that looked at feedback on some key ORP policy issues, including what constitutes a comparable workplace pension plan. Now, I touched earlier, Mr. Speaker, on the federal model and the framework provided to Canada's provinces, and the background on this is that after 2 years of federal, provincial, and territorial talks, Ottawa did introduce a legislative framework for PRPPs, and that happened in December of 2012. And this framework also applies to workers in federally regulated sectors, so in telecommunications, banking, and a few other areas, to name a few. It should be noted that legislation must be passed in each province before PRPPs can be made available to employees in provincially regulated sectors, and that also applies to self-employed people working in our provinces. You heard mention of how this is working in British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Nova Scotia, and Quebec, and I want to mention that here in Ontario, our framework is going to stress that it's voluntary. It will be automatic enrollment. There will be licensing. Contribution rates are going to be looked at. The initial rates and increases to those rates would be set by the administrators. It will be locked in. You'll see pooling of investments, and it will be low cost. Mr. Speaker, this Made in Ontario model is largely consistent with the approach that is being taken by other provinces. Encouraging people to invest in voluntary retirement savings tools, such as the PRPP, is a very important part of our strategy to helping Ontario workers retire with greater financial security. And by taking this action now, we're going to strengthen retirement for Ontarians and support those who are most at risk of undersaving, and ultimately it will protect our environment. And I now yield to my colleague from Ottawa, Orleans. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A pleasure.